Welcome to Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show here on Sports Empire Network. I am Chris, and that is Mo. Mo, how are you this morning, sir?
Doing great on a football Friday. We got college football coming up. I'm excited. The NFL is right around the corner. Postseason baseball. I'm in heaven.
Football Friday. I love how it sounds, Mo. Love myself some Football Friday. Before we jump into the show today, let's get to the headlines. Let's start off. Jets Aaron Rodgers says that the Giants' Jihad Ward was making stuff up. Mo, he was lying. Nothing happened with a crackback block. That flag must have been something else, Mo, because the flag was real. We all saw the flag, so
and the penalty was too.
Right, and the fine that's going to come today for Cobb is going to be real too. But I guess it was a misconstrued situation, and none of that laughing or chuckling or making fun of stuff actually happened. Mo, Travis Kelce he's pleading. He is pleading to Chris Jones. We need you here, man. We need you here on the squad. And let's be honest, Mo, he's right. They need him on the squad.
100%.
So we'll see. We'll see if his pleas fall on deaf ears or if he's able to get his guy back in town. We talked to JG yesterday, Mo, about the downfall of the Angels and how everyone they traded for, they basically released. Well, one man's trash is another man's treasure because the Cleveland Guardians have basically claimed half the guys the Angels put on waivers. So good for Cleveland. Cleveland's trying to make a push for the playoffs, and they picked up some of the scrap heap over from the Angels. Mo, the NFL announced that they will not punish Tyreek Hill for backhanding a marina worker this summer. So I'm glad as a Dolphin fan we can stop talking about this. Obviously, Tyreek shouldn't be walking around backhanding marina workers. No. I'm not saying he should, but I'm just glad we can officially put that behind us. The Sacramento Kings have announced they have signed JaVale McGee. Good for them. That's all I got to say about that one. The Chicago White Sox, Mo, have officially said they're not pursuing Shohei Ohtani. To which I said, one, we don't care. And two, he was never going there in the first place.
As if you had a chance.
But okay. Thank you for coming out and telling us he's not in your future plans as if it were your choice. Mo, Team USA wins again in the second round of the FIBA. It was a tough one. 85-73 comeback against Montenegro. Mo, tell us, what did you see in that game?
I saw that they do struggle with more physical teams. They do struggle. And so they don't have a lot of shooting as a unit on Team USA. And when they struggle from behind the three, the offense just stalls. What they can rely on when it comes down to it is when Steve Kerr asserts a certain lineup that plays defense end to end. Their defense got them back in the game, and then Anthony Ant-Man himself, his individual greatness kind of took over once again in the game. He had 0 points in the first half. Man couldn't hit a bucket, and then he stepped up big when it mattered most. So I like the way they're playing, but some of these games are getting close. And I would say this, going into the next few games, when you're looking at Lithuania, those are grown men. Like a lot of our guys are college age. These guys are basically professionals. They're 28, 30 years old, and they play a physical brand of basketball. So I would say if Team USA has a weakness, a bugaboo, it's going to be being able to withstand physical play.
Mo, are you concerned about the size of the team? Are you concerned that, rebounding is an issue? I mean, this past game, they were out rebounded by a lot, and it wasn't particularly close. And as they, like you said, as they face some of the powers in this tournament, they're going to face teams that are not only older and more physical, but they're going to face teams that are just bigger than they are. Do you see the size being an issue, or is size something they can overcome as the tournament progresses?
I think they can overcome it if they can control the tempo and the pace of the game. They want to play fast. But if the bigger teams can slow it down and make it more of a grind, that's going to be a problem for Team USA. That's not what they're built for. Like you just pointed out, they're a very small team. And I think as we go deeper into this tournament, at some point they're going to get challenged even more so than versus Montenegro. So I am concerned.
And breaking news, the final part of our headline segment this morning. Well, it's not really, it's breaking because it just happened, but we all knew it was going to happen, Mo. The ACC is inviting 3 teams to join them. They are inviting Stanford, Cal, and SMU. It looks like, Mo, it looks like Stanford didn't have to pay them to be there.
Didn't have to bribe their way in, huh?
Correct. It looks like they were actually wanted. So good for Stanford. But Mo, Football Friday here on the morning show. We got a couple of big guests lined up for the show this morning. Brett's going to be on the show in a little bit. We expect the man, the myth, the legend himself, the blasphemy that just falls in like a tornado when he goes to places. Freddie Fax himself will supposedly be on the show later on, Mo. I don't know. Freddie's a busy man. He's a busy man around here, around the Empire. So we'll see if he has time to come in here and spit some nonsense. But Mo, I wanted to kind of start the show out today talking a little NBA. And, there's a couple guys in the NBA who, for reasons I don't even know myself, I just don't care for. And Pat Bev is one of them. I think, when I look inside, Mo, and I really analyze the inner Chris, I say to myself things like, if I didn't like the Warriors, I would probably hate Draymond. And I think that's the reason I don't like Pat Bev. I see some Draymond in him. I find him to be annoying. That's just how I feel about him.
As do the rest of the league.
Right. But I feel like if he was one of my guys, that I would feel differently. But he's not, so I don't like the guy. But that's neither here nor there. This really isn't a Pat Bev story. Pat Bev made the following comments in regards to Anthony Edwards. He basically said that Anthony Edwards is going to get himself out of Minnesota because he is the type of player that you need to see, Mo. And I look at that, and my initial thought is if Anthony Edwards wants out of Minnesota, he's going to get out of Minnesota. Why? Because that's what happens in the NBA, right? Sure. So when a star wants out of the small market, they eventually get out of their small market and they go to a bigger market. And I'm not denying that that's eventually going to happen if that's what Anthony Edwards wants to take place. Mo, I push back a little bit because the second part of his comment was that he's the type of player that you need to see. I'm sorry. Does Minnesota not televise games? Okay. If you're a fan of Minnesota, can you not get the NBA package to watch Anthony Edwards? If Anthony Edwards doesn't have a good performance, is he not making the SportsCenter top 10? Is he not revered as one of the great players in the league right now? If you're making a top 20 or 25 list, he's going to be on that list, I think, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10. So I get that he might not be on, all the primetime games that you would see a Laker team on because they're the Lakers, or Warriors on because I get that aspect of it, Mo. But don't sit here and act like the league doesn't know who he is because of the fact that he plays in Minnesota. And as basketball fans, we are somehow being deprived of the greatness of Anthony Edwards just because he plays in. We all know who Dame Lillard is, and he's played his whole damn career in Portland.
Right.
So that's where I kind of take offense to it, Mo. What say you?
I think Pat Bev just likes to hear Pat Bev talk. I agree with you. Here's the thing. Anthony Edwards, at some point, and you're correct, he is going to want out of Minnesota, but it's not because he doesn't get seen enough. Sure, he will want to go to a bigger market, but I think he's going to want to get out of there because he's going to look around and go, I'm not going to win anything with these guys. That's why he's going to want to leave. He's going to look at Gobert. He's going to look at Towns and go, we're not winning anything. We have a ceiling, and it's probably first-round exit. So he is an elite talent. And look, in a couple of years, I would say you might make the argument that Ant's a top 10 player. Maybe it won't even take a couple of years. So Pat Bev's right in that sense. But to say that he needs to be seen, he gets seen plenty. Matter of fact, if you're watching Team USA, who do they highlight all the time? It's Anthony Edwards. So Pat Bev is just talking just to be Pat Bev.
If there was ever a time that Team USA was good for your own personal brand, Ant Edwards is feeling that right now because I don't know, Mo, if he has ever been as hyped or in the spotlight as he has been for the past few weeks and is going to be entering the NBA season. So hopefully he can capitalize on that with however he starts off the NBA season in Minnesota, because he's at a high right now.
No question. And look, stock rises and it also drops. Right now, his stock is rising. You could argue that Brandon Ingram's stock is dropping, at least so far in their international play.
And we all know how he feels about his playing time and his playing situation.
Not happy. Right now, he's the Stephon Diggs of the team.
That is not a good thing, Buffalo fans. Don't sit here and try to spin it and be like, okay, but he's elite. Stop it, Buffalo fan. Nonsense out there.
He's a competitor.
Nonsense out there, Mo. Kelly Stafford has come out. Kelly Stafford has come out and said that she regrets it. She regrets going on her podcast, and she regrets having what I felt was kind of a private conversation with all of her listeners about how her husband can't connect with younger guys. I get it. I get why she regrets it. I'm willing to bet, Mo, it was probably an awkward conversation with Matthew, because, and JG said that she's smart, and, they've been together for a long time and they're very brand savvy. And I get it. There's a point where you do things that are calculated, and maybe this was a calculated thing for her. Maybe she thought that this was going to spurn something in a certain direction. But Mo, I mean, and I'm not trying to say guys and girls or anything like that. I'm just trying to say as two guys who know how sports work, two guys who know what a locker room looks like, we could have told her, don't say that. Don't put that out there. This is going to do your husband zero favors. And Mo, that's before we knew he had a yearbook and he was going around. That's before we knew all that stuff. Like, if she just came and said, listen, Chris and Mo, Matt's struggling with the younger guys, I'm going to talk about it on my show, we'd be like, no, don't do that. There's no need for that. And then if she was like, well, wait a minute, he has a yearbook, we'd be like, well, wait, no, definitely.
Don't share that information.
Definitely don't put that out there, because that's not helping anybody. And so I imagine it was kind of awkward when Matthew was like, really? Not only was I struggling before, now they know I'm talking to you about it.
Sure. Now he goes in the locker room and they're calling him Grandpa.
Or like, why are you telling your wife you can't make friends with us? Why can't you just talk to us?
Right. Why can't you talk to us, man? Why are you go? What's up? What? Come on, man. Don't narc to your wife. Talk to us.
Reports out of Tampa Bay this morning, Mo, are that this could be the end of the time in Tampa Bay for Mike Evans. Mike Evans, who thinks that he is currently one of the top 10 receivers in the league. We can argue and debate that another time. I think we probably think he isn't. But he's good.
But he is a very productive player.
He is good. He's had over 1,000 years every season that he's been in the league. And apparently, talks have stalled with him and Tampa Bay. And he sees, as reportedly, again, it's all reportedly, Mo, but reportedly he sees this as his last season in Tampa if a deal can't be reached. And then that was reported yesterday. This morning, Mo, update on all that situation. He apparently has given Tampa Bay a week 1 deadline, which, is about a week away, to get a deal done. And then, of course, it looks like he is going to not want to resign, and he is going to try to take his services elsewhere. And before we start breaking down Mike Evans, we're going to welcome Brett on to the show. Brett, how are you this morning, sir? Brett, I can't hear you, my guy. Come on now.
I'm doing great, guys. How y'all doing today?
Coming strong with that Brett? Milwaukee 316 shirt. I like that.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Okay, you're just like Giannis. You bleed green, right? Is that what 100%. I see here? Got it. You and Giannis, cut from the same cloth, Brett. I love to see it. So, Mo, it's nice for him to set deadlines. It's nice for him to, advocate for his self-worth. But at the end of the day, can't Tampa just tag him?
Absolutely.
So, what are we doing?
He has no leverage at all. And look, when you look at the way Tampa's built right now, they might be on the verge of somewhat of a rebuild, right? So maybe they were thinking like, well, Mike, we were thinking about moving you next year anyway. Like, who knows? You pointed out that he's had 1,000 yards receiving every year he's played in the NFL, which is to be commended and is a great achievement. And I'll say this, if he gives you 11 to 1,200 yards this season, he deserves a raise. Because if he gets 1,000 yards this season, I guarantee you that 15 yards per catch average is going to come down a great deal. It's going to be the hardest 1,000 yards he's ever gotten.
Nothing comes easy when Baker Mayfield or potentially Kyle Trask are throwing you footballs.
Lots of medicine balls.
Brett, if Tampa, let's say Tampa decides we're not dealing with this. We already got Baker Mayfield as our quarterback. Maybe by week 5 or 6, Baker is benched. So they're dealing with like a little quarterback controversy there in Tampa Bay. And Tampa is just like, listen, you're approaching that magical number of 30. I don't know how old he is right now, but he's probably somewhere around there. So you're approaching the magical number of 30. We understand what you've done for us. We're not going to tag you because that number is astronomical because of what other teams play their top wide receivers. So we're going to trade you. We're going to move you. Brett, is there a team right now that could use the talent of a Mike Evans that you think would be willing to trade for him and then potentially pay him afterwards? Because let's keep in mind, thank you, Jory. Jory said he's 30. Let's keep in mind he wants to be paid. So this is similar to a Jonathan Taylor situation in that he wants to be out of his current team, but he also wants to be paid accordingly next season. And wide receivers, Brett, make more money than running backs do. So you're not going to get the $12 or $13 million a year discount here for a Mike Evans. He's probably going to want a little more of the bag. So do you see a team out there that you think would not only trade for him this year, pay him at the end of this year, but actually needs a Mike Evans caliber on their roster?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's teams out there for him. I think one team that comes to mind are the Carolina Panthers. They just drafted a franchise quarterback. They could use a nice target like Mike Evans, big-bodied, sure hands. He's always going to produce for you. So I think that'd be a nice spot for him. I think you can never have too many weapons. I think the Chicago Bears might be a fun one too. Mike Evans and DJ Moore would make a phenomenal wide receiver duo. So I think there are definitely teams out there for him. And if I were the Buccaneers, I would actually just consider moving on from him before the season starts, because you are running into a season with Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask as your quarterbacks.
I'm sorry, Brett. Go ahead, Brett.
No, you're good. I can only see this going poorly. I think the production goes down just due to such horrible quarterback play. He is 30. He's only getting older. He's not getting any younger. So I think the Buccaneers should just consider moving on from him as quickly as they can.
I was just going to add that I think a team that could use him, even though they seem to be wealthy already, why not the Kansas City Chiefs? Travis Kelce is your best receiver, even though he's also your tight end. And there's all kind of questions about that receiving core, who's going to step up. Whether you think he's a top 10 receiver or not, you know what you're getting with Mike Evans, and you know the production you're getting with Mike Evans. He's a big body receiver, but he's fast. Like, most of what he does is down the field. Mike Evans, he kills you with the 9 route. He kills you with cut routes, and he's devastating at the goal line. Or in the red zone. So why not a team that's already a contender getting a little bit richer and solidifying that receiving core? Because I think Patrick Mahomes, I think Travis Kelce would love to have Mike Evans.
I'll say maybe if he goes to the Chiefs, maybe another benefit to that is he won't get locked up by Lattimore twice a year. That's always a brutal matchup for him.
See, there you go. Already making him better.
And Mo, like you said, I mean, Mike, again, he's 30 years old. He's not getting any younger, but he can go to Kansas City and he can be a 2. He can be a 2 to Kelsey's 1.
Right.
He doesn't need to be the prototypical, even though he can be. He doesn't need to be a prototypical number 1 receiver, but that team needs number 1 juice on the receiver side of the ball. Yes. They need number 1 juice in the receiver room. You can't just keep going to Kelce as your number 1, even though he's great. He's not a receiver. So there are some things that you just can't do with Kelce, and that Kelce just can't do himself, regardless of how great he is. But you put Evans into that receiver room, and it changes the dynamic of the team. But Mo, let me ask you this. If we look at the AFC East, and we're going to talk a little more about the Patriots later on in the show, but could a team like a New England or a team like a Buffalo or even a team like the Jets benefit from a Mike Evans? Because Buffalo has Diggs, but they don't have anyone else. We already discussed, even though the Patriots just made a wide receiver signing yesterday, they don't really have a one. And then, yeah, the Jets have Wilson, but they have Wilson in a cloud of dust as far as I'm concerned, because Hardman was in Kansas City. They let him go. Jet fan, you can hype up Hardman as much as you want. I'm not that impressed until I see something, because if Andy Reid says we're okay without you, when I look at what Andy Reid currently has on his wide receiver roster, then I don't think you were that impressive. Like, Andy Reid was okay losing you, which means that he's okay with what he has, and what he has isn't spectacular, so I'm not convinced you're a number 2. And then the Jets just had a wide receiver retire, and then I don't know who their other receiver is outside of that. Brett, do you know?
I know they have right now their two big two are Wilson and Lazard.
How can I forget Aaron's boy? Aaron's boy.
There you go. And his other boy isn't Randall Cobb the locker room presence guy?
We don't talk about him. He's not catching balls.
He's not going to play, right? He's not going to play. Unless, God willing, there are no injuries, but not unless there's a rash of injuries. Randall Cobb's not playing.
Now he's going to suit up because Aaron needs him there for emotional support. But he ain't gonna play.
He's an emotional support player. That's awesome.
Yes, he is. So, and Lazard is a 2, right? He's an okay 2. I wouldn't say he's a top of the line 2, but he's a middle of the road 2. So if you're the Jets, you got Wilson, who can he repeat what he just did last season? He was offensive rookie of the year. I get that. So I'm not taking anything away from him. I think he's going to be your 1. You got a 2 who's a middle of the road 2. You got a 3 who, I guess he's a 3. I mean, I wouldn't say he's a 2, so by default he's a 3. But I'm just not blown away. I'm not blown away after Wilson. So you throw a Mike Evans in there. Okay, well, hang on now. Now you got, your 1 and 1A in Wilson and Evans.
And then Wilson, you're right. And then all of a sudden, just like that receiving core instantly becomes deeper, right?
Right. Because now your 3 is you're running it, whatever you want to do. You want Hardman in there. You want the other one in there. It looks great at that point, Mo. So I said all that to say this. Do you think one of the teams in the AFC East would benefit from going out there and trying to make a trade for Mike Evans?
I think if you're trying to win a Super Bowl and it's all or nothing, or at least that's the appearance when you're looking at the Jets, you're already all in. If you have an opportunity to bring in a Mike Evans who will not only make your team that much more explosive, but he's going to make life easier for Wilson. Mike Evans is a number 1-ish type receiver, but on a title contender, he'd probably be better as a legit number 2. And you're throwing him in there with Aaron Rodgers and all the other firepower they have out there. The Jets would benefit from him, but we talked about Buffalo the other day. I actually think the Bills would love to have him. Well, everybody except Diggs would love to have him, because if you're going to get Mike Evans in there, he's going to get over 100 targets as well, and that's not going to really be good for Diggs' numbers. But for the team, though, it's beneficial. And what Diggs needs to realize is a guy like Mike Evans makes him more effective, makes him have more one-on-one opportunities. So I do think there are teams in the AFC East as well as in the West, because right now that Broncos receiving core is not looking too good. They could use a Mike Evans. So I think there's no shortage of teams that could use Mike Evans' services. And if he actually becomes available, they should pursue it.
Brett, if you're Sean Payton, aren't you on the phone this morning with Tampa Bay being like, hey, guys, I heard you got a Mike Evans problem. I can be a Mike Evans solution. Talk to me.
Oh, dude, I have alarms on my phone set for every 15 minutes to call him at that point. Like I have no receivers. Russ needs help. Yeah, I'd be calling them hard. And I think pretty much every team in the AFC East could pretty much use them. I think Buffalo's out. I don't think Diggs would approve. I think he'd have too much of a meltdown. And I think the Patriots are out. I don't see him going to the Patriots. He seems like he'd probably want to compete, and I don't think the Patriots are close to that. To me, it really leaves I think the Jets would really be the best spot for him if we're talking about the AFC East. The Dolphins would be interesting. He'd bring a new dimension to that offense with Hill and Waddle stretching the field, and Mike Evans can work everything else underneath.
That's almost unfair. You're going to add Mike Evans to Waddle and Tyreek Hill. you got two guys that can take the top off the defense. You're going to add a third guy? You're going to add a third guy? That's it. Look, if that happens, I'm here for it because I'm watching every Dolphins game. Every Dolphins game.
The Patriots get I can't speak this morning, gentlemen. The Patriots get richer. Maybe I can't speak because richer is the wrong term to use for it. The Patriots added players this morning. They add Rager yesterday coming over from Minnesota, and they add a backup quarterback who is not from their practice squad, and Matt Corral, who was supposed to be potentially the future of the Carolina Panthers, but and and this is another example, gentlemen. You draft a guy, you think he's going to be something, you get him in camp, you realize he's not exactly what you thought he was going to be. You see him in the preseason, you further realize he's not what you thought he was going to be, and you move on. And it happens sometimes, right? And I get it. They didn't give up a buttload of picks to get him. They didn't draft him high in the first round like the San Francisco 49ers did with Trey Lance. But it's the same type of deal. You think you got something, you hope you got something, then you get to see it and see what it looks like and put it into your system, and you just realize sometimes, missed on that one. Only difference is they didn't miss as publicly as the 49ers did, which is why they're not getting beat up for it. But again, it was a failed experiment in Carolina. He had a couple of shining moments in the preseason. He just didn't do much. Now he goes to New England with Bill Belichick, and they actually have an offensive coordinator. So that's always a bright spot for the New England offense. And we'll see. We'll see what he does as a backup behind Mac Jones. But more importantly, Brett, bringing in that wide receiver, Jalen Reagor, to the offense, is he by default their new number one? Because you look at a wide receiver room that has Devontae Parker, who can't separate and never could and still can't and didn't do it in Miami, but they think he can in New England, but he can't. And then you got Juju Smith-Schuster, who, he looked great last season when Pat Mahomes is tossing him the football. Who doesn't look great when Patrick Mahomes is tossing you the football? And, credit to the Chiefs and credit to Juju for deciding to go there on a one-year deal, because it got him a third deal with a third team that he probably wouldn't have gotten before, because he probably wouldn't have gotten that deal with New England if he didn't have that season in Kansas City. So good for him. But they pay Juju as a number one, essentially. He's not a number one. So is he the new number one receiver, at least ceiling-wise, potential-wise, talent-wise, on that roster, Brett?
I think he will be. I think on the depth chart it'll say number one, Juju Smith-Schuster, but I think Jalen Reagor will probably be the one to lead the team in yards, because I think he's the only one in that room that's going to get any separation of any sorts. Like you said, Devontae Parker, they hyped him up in Miami, but he really never was able to get that separation very well. Same with Juju. I think you're going to be dealing with a lot of short routes and a lot of tough contested balls with those two. Jalen Reagor has some legit speed to take the top off defenses and kind of escape corners. So I don't think he'll be number one on the depth chart, but I think at the end of the year, Jalen Reagor will lead the Patriots in receiving yards.
Mo, were you surprised that's where he ended up? I mean, we can look at the Patriots and be like, they're not building, the quarterback and the wide receivers because they're not going to use it. They're not going to throw the ball a lot. They're just going to run it down people's throats. So, and we've kind of been joking about that, but at the same time, we really do believe this is a run first and run second team. And then when they need to, they're going to pass the ball and utilize the short passing game to the tight ends and the backs and, those medicine balls over the middle to the receivers because they can't stretch the field. So were you surprised this is where Reagor ended up, looking at how the Patriots are currently constructed?
I am a little surprised because I do think this offense is going to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It's going to be a very physical offense. They're going to try to bleed out the clock. They're not looking to get in shootouts. They're looking to control clock, move the chains, conserve their defense's energy. Like, this is going to be all about physicality on both sides of the ball and really only throw out of necessity. maybe you can go on first down at a play action if the run game is actually wearing the defense down. I'm actually surprised he did end up there, because if you're a receiver, and look, receivers have egos, we know this, you want to catch the ball. You want to get 60 or 70 catches at least. And in that offense, at least the way I perceive it to be, you're not going to the Patriots as a receiver looking to get a 12 or 1,300 yard season. That's not going to happen, not in that offense. If you're a receiver in that offense, even if you're the number one, you do well if you even cracked 1,000 yards.
No, 100%. And honestly, and he's not getting a lot of talk, and I get it because of the season that he had last year. But Mike Gesicki is a dog. He 100% is an animal when used correctly. He cannot block, and that is why he is no longer in Miami. They tried to improve his blocking game as a tight end, and it failed miserably, and it got Tua hit a lot of times. So that's why he is no longer there. But as an offensive weapon that has great hands, that is going to beat most linebackers, and is bigger than most corners, this is a guy that I think is going to be a big security blanket for Mac Jones, the way that Hunter Henry and Juju Smith, I believe his name was supposed to be, and it just kind of never worked out or panned out that way. I think Gesicki will be that guy for the Patriots. So I think you might see him catch 50, 60, 70 balls. He's only going to have like 700 yards with all those balls he catches, because he's not going anywhere with those balls. It's going to be 6, 7, 8 yard routes. But I look for him to kind of put up numbers in the passing game as far as volume goes. But when you bring Reagor in, and now you're saying, well, hey, and I saw it this morning, guys. I saw what Patriot fan is saying. They're saying things like, well, now we got Juju. Now we got Reagor. Now we got Devontae Parker. We got three. We got three legitimate receivers. Then you add in the backs and Gesicki, and look at the potential. Stop it. Devontae Parker, you're basically thrown to a corner because the corner is in his back pocket. So unless Devontae wins the fight for the ball, because they're both going to get their hands on it, then he's not catching anything. Juju is a 2 or a 3 that you're treating like a 1. He's a slot guy. And he could be a good slot guy, but he can't be a good slot guy when you don't have number ones on your offense. And I don't mean to badmouth the new kid who just got there, but look what he did in Minnesota with a better quarterback than Mac Jones, with a better offense than Mac Jones, with an offense where guys besides wide receiver 1 did have an opportunity. Kirk Cousins wasn't just feeding Jefferson. Kirk Cousins fed whoever was open. Now, granted, Jefferson was open a lot because he is elite, but Kirk Cousins would feed whoever he needed to feed the ball to move the ball down the field. So other guys were eating in Minnesota as well. Wasn't Reagor. He wasn't eating. So I don't know what you have in him, but I don't think you're going to have a clear number 1. And I think you're going to have similar to what you already have there. So if Patriot fan, if you're hyped this morning, and I get it, you know, you're in a division where no one talks about you a lot, and I'm sorry that happens, but be realistic. When you're drinking your coffee this morning, pour in a little realism and understand that you're still a 4th place team this morning, even though you added a couple of pieces. That's all I'm saying. Guys, in a surprise move, because this is not where I thought the Dolphins were going to spend their money, but Miami was like, hey, let's reset the fullback market, because why not? So and I love Alec Ingold. And Mo, I think you might have a soft spot in your heart for Mr. Ingold as well, as a former 49er. I'm just saying.
Sure.
But Ingold got a 3-year extension for worth up to $70.2 million total, which, gentlemen, is some big money for the fullback department. You talk about running back value going down. The fullback value went down decades ago. So props to Ingold for making the money that, you know, he's making in Miami.
That's big time money for a fullback. It is for a fullback. That's insane.
And if Mike Gesicki, who I think signed like a $1.5 million deal or something with New England, when he's seeing that money this morning, he should sit there and say to himself, if only I learned how to block. Because what is Ingold there for? He is there to block. He is there to block for the running game. He is there to block for the receivers. He is there to block to protect the quarterback. He is there for tight goal line situations. Every now and then he catches the ball and runs the ball, but he's there because he can block, gentlemen. My question to you with this is, obviously he resets the fullback market, but did he really? Is there I get it. Like, if I'm a fullback and I'm on a team, first of all, good for me. I'm happy to be here. Right. I don't think I'm talking. I don't think I'm asking for stuff. I'm just happy to be here. But if I'm a fullback on a team and my contract comes up and I think I'm top 5, I mean, I don't know if I can name 4 more fullbacks in the league. But if I feel like I'm top 5, do I look to my team and be like, hey, Ingold made that? Can I make like a piece of that? Or is it much to do about nothing because there really isn't a fullback market to be reset, Mo? Is it just good for him and we move on? Or is this going to have some sort of a ripple effect for fullbacks?
Not at all. It's good for him and you move on. He's there because he's actually an elite blocker, an elite run blocker and pass blocker. He is basically a lineman in your backfield. That's how good a blocker he is. He will stonewall anybody in pass protection, and in the run game, he will topple over people. He will sacrifice his body. The Dolphins' run game is going to be vastly improved. This guy is that good. He's that impactful. So I don't think it changes the market. It just solidifies him as a Dolphin because they value what he can do. He's going to be almost like Tua's bodyguard per se. That's how valuable he is to the Miami Dolphins. He will catch some balls here and there, but he's primarily there because of his ability to block.
Now, a player, Brett, who did potentially reset the market at their position is TJ Hockenson of Minnesota. He signed a 4-year extension, which means annually he is getting just over $17 million a year now as a tight end, which is big money for the tight end room. And I think, Brett, before you jump in here, I think we can all agree Kelsey is still the guy at that position. And we're not saying just because Hockenson makes the money that he's the best tight end. But, Brett, is it fair to say he is, talent-wise, maybe the second best tight end in the league? And do you think the tight end market is going to look at his deal and be like, well, come on. If the second best tight end in the league is making 17-1 a year and I'm the third or the fourth best, I better at least be in that conversation.
Yeah, I think for at least the top end tight ends, it does. I think when you're looking at TJ Hockenson, I think you're looking at the 4th best tight end in the league. I still value George Kittle over him because of how amazing he is in the run game as well as what he provides in the pass game. Unfortunately, his receiving numbers weren't that high last year, but that's just because there were so many injuries with the offensive line. He had to sit as a blocker a lot of the time. And I still think Mark Andrews is a better threat than him. But I do have him as 4th, and I think when Kelsey's contract's up, I think when Kittle's contract's up, yeah, I think it'll reset those guys. But I think a 5th guy that I'd throw in there, maybe you just up the price tag for Dallas Goedert as well. Yeah. But I think outside of those top 5, I don't really think it does much because I don't really think there's anybody tight end wise that is worth that amount, honestly.
And Mo, and this is always an interesting question because a lot of times we have this question with quarterbacks, and the answer is usually no. But the question is, when you see someone who is clearly elite at their position and they take less money and they choose not to be the highest paid or the top 2 highest paid, and they take a little less, do you think it has a ripple effect to others in that position where a team can come out and be like, listen, we know Hockenson is making this, but he's not Kelsey. And Kelsey took a little less to help the team out. We're going to need you to do the same. We know in the quarterback room, more often than not, no, the answer is no. Right. I hear you. I appreciate you. Hard pass. I want to make the most money right now. Do you think it's the same in the tight end or the wide receiver room, the skilled position room? Or do you think that they might be more willing to take a back seat because of a guy like Kelsey and seeing his talent and what taking a back seat does money-wise for his team?
You know what I think is a case-by-case situation because a lot of guys are going to be like, all valid points. I understand what you're saying. I'm going to need that money, though. I'm actually going to need that money. I understand it's good for the team, but I'm actually thinking about what's good for me. And I'm good for the team too, but I'm going to need that money. So I get it. And look, everybody's not Kelsey. Everybody hasn't had Kelsey's success because when you look at Kelsey's also one of those guys that he's in a situation now. He's been in the league a number of years. Clearly one of the greatest, if not the greatest tight end of all time. Won 2 Super Bowls. Kelsey's in a position to, I'm going to give a little bit back because I think Kelsey knows that down the road, the Chiefs are going to maybe give him a balloon payment or something, but they're going to take care of him for taking care of them. But when you're a younger player coming up, or in a case of somebody like Mark Andrews, you're looking around. The Ravens are pretty good, and they have big aspirations. But if Andrews has an opportunity to make top dollar, he's going to be like, I understand what you said, but you did just give Lamar some money. And who's Lamar need to throw to? Who's his security blanket? This guy. So I'm going to need some money. So to me, big picture, it's a case-by-case situation. Some guys will make that sacrifice. Others are going to be like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm going to need that money.
Brett, Mo brings up a really good point because if you have a top 10 tight end on your team, 9 times out of 10, he is a security blanket for your quarterback. And that's an argument that not every wide receiver can make. Maybe Cooper Kupp can make that argument because of the volume of throws that he receives on that team. But even like a Stephon Diggs, he can't make that argument. Yeah, he's one of the top 10 receivers in the league, but he's not a security blanket for Josh Allen. He's not always, despite what he says, guys, he's not really always open. And he's also not the guy who's running, 5-yard crossing patterns to be always open and kind of taking that punishment and taking those hits to be that person. Whereas a Cooper Kupp is doing that, which he's also hurt a lot. So, but I digress. A tight end can do those things. A tight end can take that beating because they are usually bigger and they're more built for that. And they can be that kind of security blanket. So, Brett, I say all that to say this. Don't tight ends almost have more leverage? Because when you are in the top 10 or you are perceived to be in the top 10 and it's time to start talking money, like Mo said, you can just be like, hey, I hear you. But at the same time, if I'm not getting 80 balls a season because QB1 is comfortable with me, and I'm his go-to when things get rough, who is? So you not only does the team need me, QB Uno needs me. So let's get back to the money that I should be getting right now.
Yeah, absolutely. This probably will end up with more tight ends getting paid, and I think a lot of them deserving, some not so much. But absolutely, tight ends can make that argument over wide receivers. It's definitely one to be made. I just don't think there's really anybody on like this top 5 levels. I think there's a pretty steep drop once you hit 6 and counting. So I'm sure somebody, some sucker, some poorly run franchise will overpay the crap out of a tight end that isn't top 5. But so it'll happen, but I'm not sure if it's justified, honestly.
I think if Evan Ingram repeats his performance last season, I think he deserves some discussion, Brett, in your top 5. Because I get it. He had that one season in Jacksonville where he kind of lit the world on fire. But if Evan does that again this season, I think this time next year we should have Evan in your like top 5 shelf of tight ends before we hit the drop off.
I think and Ingram was so good last year that he was what everybody projects Waller to be for the Giants, right? The kind of tight end that can be a deep threat, that can beat you down the field faster than most linebackers, maybe as fast as some safeties. If Ingram can duplicate that kind of season, yeah, I think he's going to leap into the top 5 as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think the key word there is duplicate. I just need to see him do it again because he's been in the league for a hot minute now, and he's had that one. He was good his rookie year, but yeah, I just need to see him do it 1 or 2 more times before I'm comfortably like, all right, this guy's better than these top 5. Because the top 5 for me, they've been doing it for years. They're established. So
agreed.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to close out the show today looking at something I thought was kind of fun. ESPN, in honor of TJ Hockenson resetting the market for tight ends and Alec Ingold resetting the market for fullback basically on the same day, ESPN was like, hey, do you want to know who makes the most money at every position in the NFL? And I was like, yes, I do. I am so glad you decided just to put this information together for my reading enjoyment. So now we're just going to toss it out there for our listeners' enjoyment. So let's start with the quarterback situation. We're looking at, for quarterbacks, when it comes to what they're making per year, we're looking at a 3-year average. So Justin Herbert is at $53.3 million per year. So big bank for J Herbs. Lamar Jackson at 52, Jalen Hurts at 51, and Russell Wilson at 50. Mo, of those four, who's the most overpaid?
Well, it's Russ. It's Russ.
Yeah.
And I like Russell Wilson. I followed him, enjoyed watching him. And look, I'm a Niners fan, but as a competitor, the guy was a very good player. And it's hard to see a very good player take that big a tumble. And mind you, this is one season. Now, granted, he wasn't as great the last couple of years in Seattle, but it's weird that so many people are basically writing this guy off. I mean, I was reading stories last night about how a lot of the top analysts are predicting that he's going to get benched this year. That at some point, Sean Payton's going to go, that's it, Russ, and he's going to give him the hook, like at the Apollo. And that would kind of surprise me. Given that he had a terrible season last year, I actually expect Russell Wilson to bounce back and have a decent year. Maybe something close to Seattle Russ. I don't know if that's going to translate to wins and help the Broncos get in the playoffs, but I think as an individual, he's going to have a bounce back year.
In the running back position, we've talked about this so much. We know the names. McCaffrey's at 17.2, Kamara's at 12.7, and Derrick Henry is at 12.5. Highest paid receivers, Cooper Kupp, $26.7 million. Stephon Diggs at 26.2 and Tyreek Hill at 25. Brett, not only is Stephon Diggs the second highest paid wide receiver in the league, so he's not getting all the money, but he's basically getting all the money, and he wants all the balls thrown his way. Brett, what more? He has the money. The offense basically goes through him. I mean, you would think the only thing that's left for him to want is to win the Super Bowl, the AFC Championship. Like, you would think that would be the third component, but yet it's not. So at this point, Brett, is it fair to say nothing is going to make Stephon Diggs happy unless you just give him the ball more?
I think it's fair to say that. Unless he's catching the ball or getting targeted at least 180 times this year, if he's not getting paid more than Cooper Kupp by the end of this year, he probably won't be happy. And honestly, at this point, I just don't think he ever will be. Maybe if he's older, maybe he gets more humble. But as of right now, at least for the next couple of years, I just don't think he's going to be happy wherever he goes.
We just talked about Hockenson resetting the market for tight ends, but Mo, he reset the market over Darren Waller. Darren Waller is the second highest paid tight end in the NFL at $17 million, and then it drops to $15.3 for George Kittle. What does Waller have to do this season, Mo, to actually earn the $17 million? Because we've heard the story. He quits on his team. He's not invested. He's not engaged. What does he need to do in New York to be the $17 million man that he's getting paid to be?
One, stay on the field. He's usually in the training room more than he is in the actual field. Two, be as productive as everybody keeps projecting you to be. There's a reason why people use words like quit on the team. He's in it for himself. He's a malcontent. Be the opposite of that. But more importantly, be Daniel Jones' security blanket. Danny Dimes could use a security blanket. He's already got Saquon, but if you can be effective with your speed and ability to get vertically downfield, I think you can earn that money, because it's strange that he makes as much as he has, because if you look at his career, he's had the one really good season. And then everything else has been DMPs, miss a lot of time, and not a lot of production. So in terms of bang for your buck, it's time for him to actually live up to that.
If you listen to Spotify, apparently he has a new podcast. I only know this because it seems like, I feel like his podcast is promoted in every sports podcast I listen to. I don't know how much money, but apparently a lot. He's making $17 million a year. So apparently he's sinking a lot of money into the marketing for his podcast. I just hope that he sinks a lot of attention into being there for Danny Dimes this year, like you said, Mo. If we look at cornerbacks, Jair Alexander in Green Bay, 21.7. He is the highest annually paid quarterback. Jalen Ramsey with Miami at 20.6. Denzel Ward at 20.2 with the Cleveland Browns. Edge rushers, TJ Watt, $30.5 million. Joey Bosa at 29.2. Myles Garrett at 26.7. Brett, this could be something where we could see in a couple of years, this gets rewritten a little bit. There are some quality edge rushers in the league that are not in the top 3. So do you think that we'll eventually see TJ Watt's number passed up? Because 30.5 is big money for an edge rusher.
I think so, because if we look at the market, it really half the time only goes up, except if you're running backs. But I think it'll get passed up eventually. But at the same time, I do think teams are going to have to start questioning how much of the cap can I really pay an edge rusher, a quarterback, and still keep a competitive edge? Because at $30 million to an edge rusher, let's say you're paying $50 million to a quarterback, you're tying up $80 million of the cap between 2 players. I think teams have to start questioning, really, can I make a contender doing that?
Is that what Kansas City is doing right now?
Right?
I think
so.
What I
mean? I think they're contemplating that very thing right now.
Defensive tackles, Aaron Donald is the market, $31.6 million. Then it's a drop-off, gentlemen. Quinnen Williams, who just signed his deal with New York to make him the second highest paid at 24, not getting that Aaron Donald money. And then right behind him was Jeffrey Simmons of Tennessee at 23.5. So Aaron Donald, I think, has gone well over the market at defensive tackle. And I think the actual market at defensive tackle is right around 24 million. So that just shows you the kind of player Aaron is. He said, I'm going to go well over the market and no one's going to come to me.
And he earned it.
That's how good I am. Safety, Derwin James at 19.6. Then it's Minka in Pittsburgh at 18.6. And Jamal Adams, who we kind of forget about in Seattle at 17.6 million. We'll finish it off with our kickers. $6.2 million for Justin Tucker, and he is worth every single penny of it. Matt Gay in Indy makes 5.9, and Chris Boswell in Pittsburgh makes 5.6. And gentlemen, when I look at how close Justin Tucker is to the next 2 kickers, then I feel he's underpaid, because I feel he is one of one in the kicking game in the NFL, and he should not be pennies away from Matt Gay and Chris Boswell. And I don't care how good of kickers they are, because we all know. If you can be a
star as a kicker, he's a star.
Correct. We all know what Justin Tucker brings to the table. So I feel that man needs to get some more money. Lamar, take a little off the top and pay your kicker, because how many times has he bailed you out of situations? So
how many times have we seen Ravens games where the kicker had like 5 field goals?
Right.
And that was like the final score. The score was like 15-10 or something like that. Like he is a weapon for them, and he's clutch for them.
100%.
I'll say, just ask Detroit. They think they have the game won because they're up 66 yards away. Oh, well, here comes Tucker to just casually cash a 66-yard game-winning field goal.
100%.
Guys, I know we're getting ready to close it out, Chris.
Yeah,
but we went over something yesterday, and I didn't know it was that big a deal. I really didn't. But I was seeing these different interviews, and it was really about the whole Joe Montana pointing out to him in his eyes that Dan Marino was the best quarterback that he had ever seen. He was at the same time acknowledging that Brady was the GOAT. He wasn't disputing that.
Correct.
But he was just pointing out, if you're just talking about production and the talent at that position, because oftentimes the way people bring Aaron Rodgers into the conversation is his talent, right? It's always the talent. They don't point to wins because he's only got 1 Super Bowl win. Like, he, as great as he is, he has 1 more Super Bowl than Dan Marino, who has none. But I think Joe Montana was making a valid point. I don't think in any way he was trying to diminish or split the bit with Tom Brady. He fully acknowledged Tom's the GOAT. Tom, when you look at numbers, when you look at winning and all the other things that come with it, even intangibles, Tom Brady's the GOAT. Joe wasn't disputing that. Matter of fact, I think he was giving it up and saying that he never considered himself the best. He readily concedes that there are other guys that played that he considered better than himself. I just didn't understand why he was getting so much backlash by acknowledging how great Dan Marino was, because he kind of gets lost in time, because you know the rule, if you don't win a Super Bowl, people go, well, he didn't win.
Yep.
And they label you as a guy that didn't win. And
100%.
if you've seen Dan Marino's career, if you saw what he had to work with on both sides of the ball, mind you, because he didn't play defense, he can't control what the defense did or didn't do. Dan Marino is one of the most underrated stars in the history of the NFL, period. And no, go ahead.
No, I couldn't agree more.
I was just going to add, yeah, I totally agree. And I think the issue with a lot of the time with the rings is people don't add context as to how those rings were won or why they were lost. I think some argument, like there's so many times where people go, like, before Jokic won this ring, they're like, well, he couldn't beat the Warriors in 2021. And I was like, well, with Will Barton as your second leading scorer, Monty Morris, Kazu, like, yeah, of course he didn't win. There's no chance. So I agree.
It is frustrating, and that's part of the nuance of sports, right? John Stockton and Karl Malone are known as losers who couldn't get it done because they lost to Michael Jordan, but they lost to Michael Jordan, and they went to 2 straight finals, so they're not losers. These are all-time great players. But just for fun, before we get too deep, so I went back and watched the interview again with Andre Iguodala and Evan Turner. You know that whole thing about we had to be up 15 to win by 1. And something didn't sit with me. I'd watched those Sixers team when Evan Turner was there. And the best they were in the Evan Turner era was his rookie year when they were 41-41. After that, everything was down. My point is, he was on a team that won 19 games and another team that won 18 games. Like, you weren't up no 15 to win 1. You weren't up much at all. What are you talking about? You were getting beat down Joe Jackson style nightly. That conversation is a made-up conversation. The only thing that Evan Turner is probably famous for is having a voice like the character from the Muppets. That's about it. But this idea that they were this elite team that we had to be up 15 to win 1, you were a nightly beatdown. Stop it, man.
Revisionist history at its finest, Mo. At its absolute finest.
Come on, man.
Gentlemen, what a way to kick off Friday here on the Empire. Make sure that you are with us this weekend. The big dogs are coming to play on Saturday. Get ready for all your college football action with the big dogs here on Sports Empire Network. Great cast over there as far as what they have on their panel. Really knowledgeable guys going to break down everything every week, all college football. So if you are big into the college football, make sure you get over there to start off your college football Saturday. Game picks, analysis, trending headlines in the world of college sports and college football. So make sure you're over there. We got a couple big ones this week. LSU's probably got the biggest game on the slate. We're looking at what Coach Prime is going to do in his debut. So they'll break it all down for you. Head over there tomorrow with the big dogs. But the last 10 seconds go to you, Mo. Take us out, sir.
Hey, thank you to everybody that's been in the chat all week. We appreciate your support. Appreciate anybody new coming up in here, checking us out. Make sure you like, share us. Check out some of the other great content that we provide to you at Empire Sports Network. Check out the Empire.
On behalf of myself and Brett and Mo, we will see you back here next week for more of the morning show here on Sports Empire Network. Until then, gentlemen.
Peace.